my first book was like, I think almost 60,000 words. And my second book's almost 60,000 words.
Right.
And I wrote them like water. It was just like, oh, this is easy. I can, and the first book was, it was a narrative story. So it was kind of like, oh, I could do this. I can do that. There's no economy at all. Where in a screenplay, you have to be so economical. And I want you just to explain to the audience that when you're reading a page, you need to look out into a sea of white. That is
Yeah.
the goal, is a sea of
Call it white
white.
space. Yeah.
As much
Less
white
is more is the advice.
yes, as much white space as you can get.
Right.
And descriptions, how long should descriptions be? All this kind of stuff. So please just explain the whole sea of white.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously there's also an art to it. There's a lot of producers and development executives that I talk to. They look for voice, right? It's the voice of the writer, and it's the same with fiction. But with screenwriting, it's even better. So there's a sense of wittiness, of rhythm, of visuals, imagery, vividness. But the key is the best analogy I found with screenwriting is that it's visual poetry. Right, so you know how poetry is very, very
A haiku, like a
sparse,
haiku,
but
like a haiku.
exactly. Haiku is even more intense and short, right? But if you think of poetry as opposed to prose, one of the mistakes that I see a lot with beginning writers, screenwriters, is that they write as if they're writing prose. So it's like it's a very novelistic voice in the script. They describe too much when you should think about how to describe the same thing with the least amount of words. So it's really more about poetry and visual poetry than prose.
Yeah, like I've read screenplays where like the man walked into the bar. The bar was, you could smell in the air the stale cigarettes. As he walked, the floor stuck to the bottom of his shoe. Like, that's wonderful.
And he was
prose.
thinking about what he had for breakfast.
And he was thinking, and by the way, here's what he had for breakfast. He had bacon, eggs. But the eggs were runny, not too runny. Like, and this
the page count is like 200 pages.
Right, and that's how it's written. And you're like, look, don't get me wrong. When I wrote my first screenplay, I was not far off from that. It was like, it's something that you have to learn. It is, because when you write in school, when you write, even if you're writing, creative writing, they don't teach you the economy of words and to make that impact so much, and using dashes and there's like little tricks and techniques to kind of just move things along. And but when you read out, and you'll know, by the way, in page one, you'll know page one, right? Yeah. Page one, you'll go, no. Yeah.
Most executives can tell by page one if it's going to be a good reading experience or not, even most readers. And I still remember an anecdote by Jerry Bruckheimer, the famous Pirates of the Caribbean producer, who's known to pick any script at random and open anywhere, and he reads one page. And if he's not wowed by that one page, he throws it off.
Wow.
So that's the challenge, And I do talk about, in my book, when I talk about describing and writing, it's not just page one that counts. It's not the first 10 pages that counts. It's not the first act that counts. It's every single page. And the challenge you should have as a screenwriter is that you should be able to pick any script, open it anywhere, and you should be completely engrossed and engaged by that one page. And if it makes you turn the second page and so on, that's the key. That's the secret.
The thing that I feel that screenwriters have been dealing with for years, and now even more so than ever, is what filmmakers are starting to deal with now in today's marketplace. So before, and also in screenwriting, in the early days, there wasn't a lot of competition. There weren't a lot of people screenwriting. That concept of you could be a screenwriter didn't come in until arguably the 70s and the 80s is when it really started to come up, right?
Actually, I may correct you on that.
Please tell me.
That goes all the way up to the 1910s.
When do you mean?
1913, there's actually the very first.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Thing,
yes.
How to write a photo play. They used to be called
the photo play. Yes.
There used to be an how-to industry for screenwriters all the way back to 1910.
But how much competition? Like how many people were really?
If there was books already printed,
I guess
that everybody wanted to write screenplays, right? Then, so it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And there was some competition without question.
But you're right. In the 70s, I think Sid Field is the one that kind of turned it.
It blew
around.
up. It blew up, and then
mainstream,
yeah. Linda came out afterwards, and they really were the catalyst of everybody, and the technology was much more affordable, and it was a big thing. So there was a lot less competition back in the days. Now there's just ridiculous amount of competition for screenwriters. Filmmakers before too had less competition in the marketplace. If you just made a movie in the 80s, it was sold. Good,
Right.
bad. Toxic Avenger was sold internationally.
Right.
There was less competition. So I think what we're taught. The reason I'm bringing that up is because when you're a screenwriter now, you've got to use every trick in the book to cut through all the competition and formatting and having that creative white space. I'm assuming you are a genius storyteller. This is beyond the storytelling. That's an assumption.
Well, I'll correct you on that one as well.
Sure,
Actually.
go for it. Tell me, please.
As much as there's an importance in the formatting and the description, right? And
Sure,
the way
sure,
it
sure.
looks like a professional. The number one thing above and beyond anything
Right.
is the craft of storytelling.
Well,
In other
obviously,
words,
yeah.
if you don't know the craft of storytelling, which I find a lot of people don't, they think they do, but they don't. They could have the most perfectly formatted script and the best written description-wise, but you're still not going to have a good experience after reading that script, right?
Right.
So it's like there's that joke about, that William Goldman, when he was writing screenplays, he could write, or Joe Esterhaz, he could write a script in a napkin and it would sell for $3 million, right? Because it's not about the napkin, it's about the craft of storytelling. So at least for me, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm all about the craft of storytelling.
Right,
So
which is
that's an important thing.
Which, without question, I do not disagree with you in the least. But with that said, when you're Joe Esterhaus, when you're Shane Black, when you're Tarantino, when you're Aaron Sorkin, you really don't have to deal with any of the rules that we're talking about. Because people are going to read it because of who you are. But that first script, that very first one, you can't have misspellings. You can't have grammatical issues. You can't
You gotta look good.
You have to be tight.
First impressions count.
You've got to be tight.
I remember when I used to be a reader. That was my first entry level in the industry. Right. I used to be a script reader for Edward James Olmos. And we have all these tricks. We look at the last page. We go, oh my God, it's 200 pages. We know the guy's an amateur. We look at formatting. So there's all these little things that you can do right away to kind of like already get the flags out of the way, right? So you see all these red flags. You go, okay, that's an amateur, and then you read the script. So you don't want that. So you're right, and those are very fixable. You want to, checking for typos, make sure it's formatted correctly. And all the stuff, make sure it looks professional. That's obviously the first step. Yeah.
It's tightening up the craft of just the presentation.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the storytelling involved, and that's what you need to cut through all of this competition. Because look at Bruckheimer. You're like, he'll just grab. I mean, how many scripts does Jerry Bruckheimer have in his office? I'm sure literally piled.
All right. Yeah.
Piled up. So if you're lucky enough to, like, if the gods are with you on the day that he picks up yours and goes, Pirates of the Caribbean.
File. Yeah.
What do you mean? Fighter pilots? No, that's not going to work. So